Folks, are you prepared for what lies ahead? That's what the harvest season is about. And this weekend, Kat and I decided to collaborate on a harvest season special show. And we're covering an article that was written by a gentleman named Doug Casey. This was picked up by Glenn Beck, and he basically said this is coming. And this article was 11 plans global elites have for your future. And he starts the article off by saying the global elites and the left-wing media have done their best to paint everything they are planning as conspiracy theory. However, many of us aren't gullible enough to believe it. Glenn Beck is one of those people, and he argues that those conspiracy theories are actually conspiracy facts. He talks about Doug Casey is another man who knows the truth. And Glenn reads one of his articles as we're covering today. The article is The 11 Assumptions About the Future. The article can be used to guide our actions moving forward, and it lines up perfectly with the warnings Glenn has told us about day after day for years. Years, Glenn has been blowing the trumpet. Mm-hmm. And he's written a book about it called Dark Future. We've already covered 6 of those points, and we want to just move right into number 7.
I'm very
Kate,
excited.
are you ready? Are you ready, Kat?
Yes.
Number 7.
Oh yeah.
Well, you want to cover the 7th one?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and read the 7th one. Folks, you guys can see us live in studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. And be sure to subscribe to our programs. The DPB Show on YouTube, Cat Peterson 929 on YouTube. The DPB Show Sunday from 1 to 3, Cat Peterson from 5 to 6 p.m. on Saturday night.
Well, before you get into number 7, let me recap the first 6. If you missed the first hour, which would be the only hour of the Conservative Cat Show, or the first hour of the DPB Show, the first assumption is that the global elites will attempt to restrict and regulate our ability to move, whether through vax passports. That's a conspiracy. No, not. Increased visa requirements. Oh, boy, that's happened, except unless you're coming through the southern border, then there is no visa requirement. 15 minutes is, and I'm not laughing because you've got to laugh at this stuff. If not, you cry all the time.
Because they'll sit there and they'll say that it's conspiracy theory. We've seen the vax passports. I'll never forget, who is it, Bill de Blasio?
Yeah.
Where it's the most cringiest video, where he's got the hamburger and the fries, and he goes, sign me up for a vaccine. Give me my vaccine passport. Yeah. You mean there's a burger element to this, a fries element to this? He's trying to convince you to go get...
They would pay you to get a vax passport.
Yes.
They would bribe you for it. The 15-minute city initiatives, which we know that many of the progressive communities, like our very own town of Normal and city of Bloomington, are moving towards these 15-minute city initiatives. There will be restrictions that we all need to be prepared for. Number 2 assumption was the central bank digital currency. Yes, it is here. They don't want to have cash in our society. 3rd is the digital ID is already here. Once again, we've done that collectively together. Think of what we have done. We've given them a picture. In fact, some of you have given them too many pictures, myself included. I'm not trying to say that I'm holier than thou, but Facebook, we've given them our photo albums. What we used to hold near and dear to our hearts in our households in photos, we now have put out digitally. They can track you. First and foremost, those are all timestamps. Mm-hmm. They know exactly where you've gone, where you've been, and what you've done. So the digital ID, it's going to, continue. Number 4, the Great Depression, the Greater Depression, I should say. And Casey cites Simon Hunt. Hunt suggests the market pullback of up to 30% now, meaning it's October, beginning of October. The harvest season is upon us. And by early 2024, meaning early 2024, the first quarter, just prior to the primary elections, or the start of the primary elections, because our first primaries, the caucus in Iowa starts in February, I think, right? I think it's February. It's not January, but it's February. And that 30% between now and early 2024, followed by the pump and the deflationary wipeout in 2025. So they've got a plan, basically, which is why some people think that there might not even be an election in 2024.
Oh, I've said that before. And I think it's just because of the propaganda that I've seen. You can start to see, and they like to seed these different things, and it
No,
takes time over a
yeah,
period of years, where they're coming out with blatant headlines that
yes,
read New York Times, elections are bad for democracy.
yes.
They're going to try to convince you that this election is bad for what they call
Well,
democracy.
there's some major crisis that's going to come about, whether it's inflationary or, the imploding of the markets. Well, we can't have an election because not,
Ukraine,
yeah,
Russia, invoking martial
yeah.
law.
Can people vote? Will they be able to do their vote by mail? Will they be able to get to the polling place? Will they be able to, yeah. So that's number 4. Number 5 is that most of our assets, if you have any savings or any holdings, limited as they may be, or maybe you're independently wealthy, you might escape it for a while, but not for very long, because they will control everything. Assets will literally, physical assets. If you have gold, you have real estate, those might endure to some level, but they're motivated enough to take everything away from you. Um, Number 6 is where we ended up in the first hour, increasing crime and disorder, meaning they're weaponizing criminals.
Mhm.
When I say that, you say, well, that's a conspiracy. No, they're weaponizing them. If they know who these folks are based on digital footprints and digital IDs, they know where the criminals are, but they don't arrest them for committing crimes. They have videos over and over of people committing crimes, but are those people held accountable for their actions? We have no cash bail any longer. Catch and release here in Illinois, and also the Safety Act, meaning we really don't stand behind law enforcement.
Tell me how this makes sense, David. So you implement things like digital ID to go after criminals. Okay, so you can track a criminal if he commits a crime in Illinois all the way to Iowa if he flees the state to try to get away from answering to his crimes. Tell me how that works out when you eventually apprehend the criminal. Say they actually do what they say they're going to do and use the license plate cameras and all the cameras placed everywhere around
Yeah,
the world,
yeah.
the country. Uh,
And they apprehend a
and they actually
criminal.
do that.
Yeah.
Tell me how that works out when you have no cash bail and when there's things like the Safety Act, because when you actually apprehend the criminal, he just go I mean, there's no point to actually enforcing the law if at the end of the
Well,
day, when you put him in handcuffs, he's right back out.
and that's what I'm saying. So if they have visas or if they have IDs, why aren't we implementing that at our southern border? It's open every day. We don't know who most of these folks that are coming in. I think, for the most part, they're poor people fleeing for prosperity because they know America is a place where they can feed their family, try to become homeowners. But ultimately,
Then they get
we
here,
don't
they
even
find
know
out.
we don't even know that. Yeah, then they get here and they find out that, they're bused to a state that, even the liberals don't even want them in their states any longer. JB's making an appeal to the federal government. JB Pritzker, Governor Pritzker, is making an appeal to Joe Biden again to get federal bailout for all of the sanctuary, because he did want it to be a sanctuary state. And now that we're a sanctuary state, it's like, well, we need funding for our sanctuary state. So who's going to fund that? The federal government, which means the people,
Mhm,
meaning the taxpayer. Taxpayer funded sanctuary states. So you're right, Kat. It's it's equipping, and it is weaponizing criminal activity.
mhm,
For
mhm.
what? To build an army? I have no idea. It seems pretty I don't know.
To build an army and take over the world. So
All
that
right.
was the 6th
Number
assumption.
7.
Number
Now
7.
we're caught up.
Now we're caught up. The 7th is that supply constraints are increasing around all commodities. And globally, people will have a much harder time affording everything from food to energy. So, supply constraints are increasing around all commodities. Oh, so this is talking about the supply chain issue where you go into the grocery store and you don't have baby formula.
Or you need to get Scott Robbins on the radio with you, and he has to have a certain kind of equipment, and you can no longer get that equipment.
Yes.
So therefore, it restricts your ability to have Scott Robbins in the morning on the morning buzz
Mhm.
because he needs a certain kind of equipment, and they're back ordered
Yep.
for decades, whatever it is, because they're just not supplying it. Or you're right, empty shelves, gas shortages. We had that during the Carter era, right? The
Mhm.
lines at the gas station, people just trying to pump in $1.50. Well, of course it was. Yeah, I guess it was $1.50 back there, and it was inflated. It used to be a quarter, and it was $1.50. Imagine that.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a quarter, if gas was 30 cents and suddenly it was $1.50, so 5 times, 6 times higher than it was, and then you were limited on how much you could get, you couldn't even fill up your tank. And most people couldn't afford to fill up their tank because it was dollars compared there. So shortages, you're right. I mean, that's
Yeah, and
supply
well,
constraints.
that baby formula shortage was really hard on mothers. I mean, I remember mothers, I mean, it was going on for a long time, and still I don't think that the supply is up to speed when it comes to the baby formula. If you go into the store, check out the shelves. I bet they're empty still.
We are in a country of so much abundance, and we would have a shortage of anything.
Mhm.
What gives?
Well,
Who's who's
yes.
who's controlling it? These
Yeah.
people are like the Wizard of Oz, behind the screen, puppeteering all of this. This is why we're saying that this show, this Harvest Special here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal, this special harvest season show between Kat and I, is all about the 11 plans global elites have for your future. These global elites are doing this. It's not for the lack of resources. A country like Argentina, one of the wealthiest countries at one point, was literally deflated to the point that poverty, only 1/7 of the population, was holding up the rest of the economy, meaning people just weren't working,
Wow.
or that limited people were working for the government. But that puts such great pressure. Well, that's what they're trying to do here.
Well, and then you can also look at places like the AW or the UAW strike, right? Where Ford, they closed down this plant in
Yeah.
Chicago Heights. It's actually a plant. It's not even really, they don't sell cars. It's a plant that creates parts to sell cars. But because the workers aren't working, they don't need the parts
Yeah.
because the workers aren't assembling those parts. So we're going to see a mass shortage in vehicle production.
Yeah.
Uh, we're not
This
going to be
this
making
isn't
vehicles.
about employing Americans. This isn't about the working class. This isn't about workers' rights. They don't care about your rights. And you know what? If you're listening today and you know of a friend, or you yourself are a member of a union, um, they don't care about you. And if you continue that delusional thought, you're mistaken. Your family's going to suffer. I know you don't want your family to suffer.
Don't continue voting for people who are going to lead you to literal demise.
Well, and at this point, I don't even know if voting is going to affect anything.
Mm.
Get yourself prepared. Come together with other people. And this is Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, Green Party. I don't care what your flavor is. This is going to impact you. If you're in the trans community, the LGBTQIA plus community, they don't care about you. You think they care about you? They don't. They're using you.
Mhm. Well, look at all the people who detransitioned. The moment they detransitioned or spoke out about how they were saved and how they don't no longer lead a homosexual lifestyle, they
Mhm.
are abandoned by that community faster than you can say LGBTQIA,
Yeah.
right? They're
Uh,
abandoned
you
by
know,
that community. Brandon
Brandon
Strock
Straka.
from
Brandon Strock found that out,
yeah,
in his walk away. Try walking away from the cult, you know?
that's what it is.
That's what they are.
Progressivism is a cult, and I'm afraid that people will not rebuke the cult,
Yeah.
because it is such a religion.
Well, guess what? You don't have to rebuke it, because we're going to go on to number 8, because these things are happening with or without you. 11 plans for global elites, the 11 plans global elites have for your future. You can deny it all you want. It's real. It's happening. You know it. I know it. And if you think that it's not going to be, well, keep living that way. And that's okay. I mean, we're still, as far as I know, the last time I checked, we are still a constitutional republic. And you have the right to deny everything that we're saying today. But this is a harvest season special, Kat.
Mhm.
So moving on to number 8, in Doug Casey's article, the assumption, his 8th assumption is that World War III is coming and may have already begun. Think about it. That's, this subtleness with the global powers to be and Zelensky and the playing of Russia against Ukraine and what that's all about. But uh, it's I think it has.
Mhm.
China, obviously, in their ambition to take over Taiwan, North Korea's back up. The one thing about Trump was he kept all of these players at bay and didn't allow them just to disregard us as a country.
One would say that Trump was a restrainer of evil, and this is a Harvest special on Cities 92.9. I'm Kat Peterson over there as David Paul Blumenshine. Kat Peterson Show, the Conservative Cat Show, 5 to 6 p.m. on Saturdays, Sundays, David Paul Blumenshine Show from 1 to 3. And you're so right that they're harvesting, they're planning, they are really, I mean, I think of a guy in a chair, maniacally, like
Yeah.
they're sitting there and they're just plotting and planning a way of how to destroy America. Not even just America, but the world.
They're sowing. They have taken what we have always done. You reap what you sow. You plant, cultivate, and harvest. They have taken the rules for radicals, Sal Alinsky's, Obama's buddy, Hillary, and they've followed the roadmap. They have planted, they have cultivated, and now they're harvesting.
Mhm.
And they're harvesting to the point that they know that, or they believe they're winning. And that's where I think we got them. If we can just make sure that we wake up and look at and address these things. We know that they're the censorship and the digital control, which is point number 9, his 9th point. Censorship, digital control will enter a new phase that includes debanking. Do you know what debanking is, Kat?
Debanking, which means I don't actually know what that is. So censorship, debanking.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, you know what defacing is, right? Is eliminating a person in China. The Chinese Communist Party defaces you. That's the term they use. And
Oh.
and so censorship and digital control will enter a new phase, meaning you think that your selfies out on the social media, you want to promote yourself, you want to do this, they're going to debank you.
So real quick, I want to see if this is, and I'm going to pick your brain a little bit here, David. Is this the same thing as taking away somebody's name? So, for example, I forget his name. I think it's Trevor Bauer. It recently came out that this woman who made all kinds of sex allegations against him were not true. There was evidence of that. There was video evidence of that. She claimed that he beat her and raped her and all of this. And the courts found that all of that wasn't true, but with this pervasive censorship of him being placed, he couldn't talk about the case. He couldn't talk about the evidence he had. He couldn't defend himself in the public court of public opinion. And they actually took his name away from him because he was fired from the MLB. He was a big pitcher, I think, is
Yeah.
Trevor Bauer, and he was this big pitcher, and he had these sex allegations come out against him, and he had to move to Japan and
Mhm.
basically abandon his life here in America. And they're doing it with Donald Trump too. Sex allegations, they're robbing him of his name, his wealth. They're going after, and they're really just stealing your name. And I think that we are in a turning point where it enters a new phase where we are being defaced. So if you
Debanking. So debanking.
debank, that
Here's
is
what I can tell you.
debanking.
Here's exactly what it is. Sarah Coffey wrote an article on August 21st, 2023, where she talks about what is debanking, political and religious discrimination by financial institutions. The National Committee for Religious Freedom, NCRF, checking account with JP Morgan Chase was suddenly closed with no explanation in
Mm,
spring of 2022,
mm,
when the organization, led by a diverse board of Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Hindus, dedicated to promoting religious freedom in America, inquired about the closure. They received a list of demands from the financial institution. They were told their account would be reinstated if they provided a list of their large donors, political candidates they support, and an explanation of how the NCRF determines what candidates to support. So it's what you said, in a roundabout way, censorship.
Yeah. Well, and
It's limiting your ability to be who you are.
And Trevor Bauer, right, he went through that debanking. He
Yeah.
did. He actually, had to pay for all of these lawyers, and, he didn't get any kind of financial,
Ken Paxton was debanked.
Ken Paxton, Russell Brand,
Yes.
because Rumble, they've tried to go after
The
Rumble, and
pastor
Rumble
here
is
in
restraining
Chicago,
that.
the pastor just recently, the pastor that
Oh,
it was
listed
indicted
in that
with Trump.
18, I
Yeah.
think there's 18
Yeah.
indictments, something like
18.
that, in Fulton County, Georgia.
Yes.
Yep. So they're going after people and stealing their names from them and their finances and literally shutting them down financially. With Russell Brand, Rumble is trying to stop that, but the UK, the government in UK actually wrote Rumble and said, "Hey, you
Yeah.
better deplatform this guy, and he better not be monetizing on Rumble." And Rumble just shot back and said, "Look, we're a free speech platform. Sorry,
Yeah.
we don't care what's come out about Russell Brand with these sexual allegations. We're a
Yeah.
free speech platform, and we're going to continue to allow
Yeah.
him to
We
monetize."
believe in free speech.
Yeah.
And that's basically what this assumption is that censorship and digital control will enter a new phase that includes this debanking. But if you think about it, Kat, if we've already moved towards a non-cash society, and most people still keep their cash in their bank, or at least they'd like to think it's in their bank because they go to an ATM and they withdraw cash. But what can they do with that cash? They take it to a place where they can't even use it. Now, what happens if you go to your ATM? And this is what I said earlier with the cashless society, and you use your card, and suddenly it won't kick it out because it tells you your account's been closed.
Mm.
And your account's been closed because they don't like
Who
what
you
you and
voted
I,
for.
they don't like the fact that you and I did a harvest special.
Yes. Yes.
They didn't like the fact that we covered these 11 plans that the globalists have for your future.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to shut us down. And it's very possible one day you will suddenly find out, and we'll try to make you aware of it if we can, that they no longer like what Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond the rhetoric of what you usually hear in the mainstream media. They don't like us covering topics and giving ideas and asking questions. So now they just deprogram us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they shut our bank accounts down.
I'm waiting for that day, and we kind of saw it with that Washington Post article. We're already on some sort of list or radar as a local station. And they came, did a hit piece on you, me, and the station itself, and we're already on their radar. I know that, and they don't like what we're doing for sure because they had little Annie come here
Little
and
Annie, get your gun.
try to bully us into not doing what we're doing and try to make us feel bad about what we're doing. But
Well,
it didn't work
and then just totally taking and flipping the article. It's like my comment about the fact that, Annie, I don't know, I'm sitting there in 11 to 12, maybe 13 buses, fully loaded, limousine buses. Actually, I think it was more than that. I start thinking now, I think it was over 20, could be 25 buses, limousine buses pull up to the Capitol building. They were all uniform buses. It looked like from the same contract busing service, and they dropped those people off at the front of the building. She says that was conspiratorial. Like, wait, what? There's a rally going on, Annie. And suddenly,
I was there,
Yeah,
Annie.
I was there,
Were
Annie.
you?
Weren't there, Annie. I was there. I witnessed it with my eyes. I don't know who those people are, but it seemed very suspicious. And nobody talks about it, Annie. Don't you think we should start talking about these things? The 60,000, 40,000, whatever the number is up to now of hours of video footage that suddenly got buried. In fact, Kevin McCarthy didn't even really allow us to see what was going on. We didn't move the needle on that. We need answers. And we don't get answers, Annie. And that's what we're talking about, because you folks in the media
have censored.
That's right.
Have censored,
And continue to do it.
and they are doing something called digital control. And one thing that I wanted to ask, because we like to do solutions here at Cities 92.9, David, what do you think about Section 230? This needs
Oh,
to.
yeah.
This is the answer, but they won't. They won't implement 230 like it's supposed to be implemented.
Yeah.
Section 230 says that
Yep.
these platforms, Twitter, Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram, these guys are not supposed to edit or editorialize. Okay,
Yes.
so Annie, get your gun.
No, all they do is
Washington
provide
Post.
content. That's all they do. And they skew everything.
Yeah.
And there's no repercussions. I mean, we already know they're controlled by the agencies of the government.
Allowed to do it because Section 230 says because you are a platform,
Yeah.
you cannot do that because you get extra protections under the law. Because say Joe Schmo, he gets out there and he starts threatening people online. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram can't be held liable for Joe Schmo threatening people online. Okay, yeah. They are afforded that extra right as or not an extra right, but really they're afforded more protection under the law than that of a publisher. So we here at Cities 92.9, we're a publisher. We editorialize.
Yes.
Washington Post editorializes.
Yes.
That's okay.
We should all be held to the same accounting of Section 230.
Yes. Yes. And we really need to implement Section 230 the way it's supposed to be. We're publishers, they're platforms. Platforms are supposed to be a town square.
That's right.
And they're not.
And they're not. They're not. Mark Zuckerberg's been up on Capitol Hill. This is the thing, Kat. We continue to play cutesy with these people, and they're not stopping. This is their plan. That's why we're going through these 11 points. We want to inform people. We want to inform you that we already know that you probably are aware of most of these points. We're trying to prepare you because the next one, assumption number 10 from Casey's article, and of course it mirrors Glenn Beck's The Dark Future, is, and I don't know how much time we have still because I think we're going to hit upon this one for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The 10th assumption is that the U.S. election, regardless of the outcome, I know you want to be solution oriented, Kat. You just said it. So do I. But regardless of the outcome is an inflection point and potentially a flashpoint. And he's not even sure there will be a 2024 election. We alluded to that earlier with all these things building in society. And right now, we're witnessing that, with the indictments of Trump. When you start trying to lock up your political opponent and your candidate is Joe Biden, who can't even draw, a crowd to a trough if he were giving away free pizzas, and not the kind that Brandon gave away up in, not to say Brandon Joe's Brandon, but also Brandon, our mayor, good mayor up in Chicago, number one city, according to JB. Frozen pizzas. Had a pizza party for the kids, giving away frozen pizza. This is reminiscent of the food lines, of literally lemmings, people just flocking. And so the fact that Casey believes there might not be an election, we talked about the different catastrophic crises that can be planned or actually spontaneous.
Well, and the whole conditioning around COVID-19. So they couldn't just come out and cancel that election. Okay. So this was all planned where they released that virus onto the people, Wuhan virus onto the people.
Yeah.
And this was a pandemic. That was all planned because they're sowing the seed. They are trying to make it normal and normalized mail-in ballots. They normalized early voting, the election season, and I think we still have a long way to go.
Under the guise of suppressing the vote. They wanted to see. Here's the thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
If indeed all of these programs with elections were working, why aren't we turning out more votes in Illinois for the Republicans? The Republicans haven't moved the needle on the amount of votes they've turned out, but yet supposedly all these programs are supposed to help this. So these are only programs that help the Democrats.
Yeah.
No, they
Well,
do
and
say, somebody
the
said, well,
numbers
there's
don't lie.
record numbers, right, for the last presidential elections. Never before had any candidate received 81 million. Well, I not only believe that never before and never that time either did any candidate get 81 million. But Trump, even with 75, 74 million, how did we go from a race where Trump had 63 million and won that election over Hillary? She obviously didn't get 63 million, to 81 and 75 million in 4 years. Was that because of these programs they've implemented through the COVID crisis with vote by mail?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it because we have a lot of people, or we have a lot of individuals or names who are on inactive voter lists? This was a big part of the show that I did last week with Carol Davis and Eric, and this whole system that's a progressive system run by progressives to try to clean up voter rolls, which then they find out they're really not cleaning them up. They're just, their idea of cleaning is to add. It's
Mm-hmm.
an addition for them.
Well,
So,
and I want to point out some numbers, and I think I'm going to run these by you really quick because I think that they're interesting. So, if you look at the viewership of debates, of interviews done with Tucker Carlson and the leading GOP candidate, uh, Donald Trump, these are such low numbers in comparison. You're talking 24 million people watch the Tucker Carlson and Trump interview, and then you're talking maybe 2 million people tuned into the primary
yep,
debates on Fox News.
yep,
You would think that if there's what was it, 74 million people who voted for Donald Trump in the
yeah,
2020, way
yeah,
more people.
74, 75 million. Yeah.
You would think that more people would be tuned into these very pivotal moments in in the election cycle. I mean, these are debates that are broadcasted on cable news. A lot of people have cable, Twitter, right? You would think that there would be more people tuning into those debates. Now, my question is, how much of these 81 million people or 74 million people are high information voters? I don't think any of them. If you look at the numbers, that is a
Oh,
fraction.
well, and
And
you're,
I think that they're inactive voters that are
well,
voting.
and
I
they're
know.
inactive voters, or their ballots that are showing up that are being counted, whether and how they're going about getting those ballots, who knows? Well, we have some good ideas, right? We
Mhm,
watch 2,000 Mules. We know that there's definitely a program for gathering ballots. Um, but the question that seems to always escape us, and we never really answer that, is, so Pat Quinn had 1.6 million 80,000 votes in 2014, and Pritzker, well, Quinn was running against Rauner in 2014. JB was running against Rauner in 2018. So Quinn had 1.6 million 80,000 votes, and he lost to Rauner. Rauner had 1.7 million in 2014. In 2018, he had 1.7 million votes, about the same amount that he got in 2014. But Pritzker had 2.5 million. He got almost 900,000 more votes than Pat Quinn got in 2014 in 4 years. Well, that's my point about the 2016 election and the 2020 election.
mhm,
Trump outdistanced in the Electoral College Hillary. I think Hillary was somewhere right around, she won the popular vote, right?
mhm,
But still, it was only 63 million.
mhm.
How did Hillary go? How did Joe Biden go from 63 million to 81 million? That's my
Exactly.
question.
Yeah, they got that many votes from
In 4
Democrats.
years,
They got that many Democrats to turn out to
that many
vote.
more Democrats.
Yeah.
And even with Trump's record numbered, um, did they see the number that Trump was going to get in 2020, and it was overwhelming and they couldn't take it? So they had to figure out how to manufacture a vote count
Mhm.
to get 81. Who believes that Joe Biden got 81 million votes?
Nobody believes it.
I believe Hillary Clinton got 63 million. I'm not questioning that.
Mhm.
Um, but Joe Biden, 81 million, which gets back to, will there even be, assumption number 10, will there even
Even be.
be an election? And that's scary,
Mhm.
to think that they could undermine the electoral process. And as you said earlier in the show, they don't believe in elections anyway. They
Mhm.
really don't, because socialists don't believe in elections. Communists don't believe.
Believe in
Marxists don't
elections.
believe in elections.
And you can see on propaganda sites like New York Times, The Atlantic, they had another headline out there that they're saying elections are bad for democracy.
Yeah,
That should concern you that mainstream media has headlines printing American mainstream media are printing headlines that elections are bad for democracy. That is CCP type of crap.
yeah,
And we're not very far off, I don't think, from having one choice on the ballot. And I really do think that that might be what happens is there is one choice on the ballot because there's countries they fake elections, right?
yeah,
Where they hold elections,
yeah.
but really you get the one choice,
Yeah,
and you
that's
go
right.
into the
They
ballot
they go
box.
through all the political drama, the political theater to act as if they're, even though they're at the same time they're arresting their political opponent. Oh no, that's here in the United States. That's not in Venezuela.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah.
Hey, do we have time to? I want to
The
get through the
11th.
last number 11, but then I also want to recap. Do we have that kind of time?
We've got about 10 minutes, David Paul.
Okay, we got 10 minutes, so
Mhm.
that will allow us to do a little recap. So, last in the 11 assumptions of our writer Doug Casey, who put this article forward. Blaze Media picked it up. The Glenn Beck program picked it up. 11 plans global elites have for your future. We've reached the final one, number 11.
And you're listening to Cities
Oh, there you
92.9, the
go.
news
Good
and
idea.
talk of Bloomington Normal. Right over there is David Paul Blumenshine. I'm Kat Peterson. You guys can always tune into our programs via our streams. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. And share out your podcasts with normie friends. I call them your normie friends, people who are low information. That's the DPB show on YouTube and Kat Peterson 929 on YouTube. The 11th assumption.
And the reason you say that is folks, if ever I could implore you to get involved and get educated and get knowledge, we many of you are Christians like we are. Some of you are not Christians. You might be Jewish, you might be Hindu, you might be Muslim. You still have a faith tradition that you learn about and you study about and you do deep dives on, because you should be asking questions of everything. We're just asking you to come along with us and ask these questions. That's all we're doing. We're
Mhm.
looking at these assumptions and we're asking questions about them. So, number 11, last and unfortunately not least, according to Doug Casey, there is a war happening today. Folks, there is a war happening. We are living in a police state. Come on. The FBI came knocking at my door after January 6th. I know we live in a police state. Um, and it's a war on us, you and me, our listeners here, you at Cities 92. The war is against you. As Trump says so eloquently, they're not after me. I'm just in the way of you.
Mhm.
And he happens to be the person running who has exposed these people for everything they are. He's exposed these 11 assumptions. He gets it. But if and when we see a move toward kinetic force, we should be alarmed, because we will have entered a new and more dangerous phase. Um, that says it all.
Mhm.
You know, Glenn Beck says, or Doug Casey says, a kinetic phase. Bongino has said over and over again that something's happening, and you never know when it's going to be. You know, he gave the example of a watermelon and the guy that put a rubber band around the watermelon, right? And he did that every day. He would film himself putting a rubber band on the watermelon. Finally, he had about 4,000 plus band or rubber bands around, and he put on the 4,999 rubber bands, and he put a rubber band, the 5,000th rubber band, and the thing exploded, right?
Mhm.
And somebody says, well, it was the 4,999 rubber bands that exploded, that the pressure. No, it was that one. You never know when this thing is, we're going to see kinetic energy, or that one event that truly transforms where we're at. We hope it's for good. That's what this harvest special is about, is, are we harvesting? Are we working, planting, cultivating, and harvesting? Are we sowing and reaping? And that's what we hope that you will be doing. Uh, as you listen to this, you're saying, gosh, I'm taking notes. I'm replaying this show. I'm going out and getting this article, and we'll put this article up on social media so you can see. We're not here to hide anything. We want you to be informed. We want you to cover these points. And so I'm going to let you recap these points. Are you ready to do that, Kat?
Yeah, and take part in your local communities and go and speak against things like smart cities. And that'll be our first recap. Number 1.
Smart cities. Stan Nord spoke out against the smart city. He asked a lot of questions, and look what happened to Stan Nord. They will debank you.
Yes. And the global elites, they're going to try to attempt and restrict our and regulate our ability to literally physically move. So I'm talking about vax passports, increased visa requirements, 15-minute city initiatives like we are here in the town of Normal. There will be restrictions that we will all need to prepare for and speak out against. So, like, be a Stan Nord and speak out against
conspiracy facts.
Your smart city.
Yeah, Stan brought the facts. They didn't like the facts. You know, you can't handle the truth. It's true. They couldn't handle the truth.
The second assumption is that there will be central bank digital currency on its way. Cash will be eliminated. Major economies are working to be ready to deploy the central bank digital currency by 2025. So that's pretty close. We're going to be looking at a central bank digital currency. Cash will no longer be king. Cash is king. We should be using cash for things. So if your local grocery store says you can't pay for these strawberries with cash, be a dissenter, pay with cash anyway.
And
if they want to call the law enforcement on you, then go ahead, call the law enforcement.
Make them take you in handcuffs. Don't worry, there's no cash bail, so you don't have to worry about that. They can't. It's a catch and release. So let's use their system against them. So don't worry, you're not committing a crime. Well, you might be committing a crime according to them that you're using legal tender, but make them force that argument that if you give them cash, they haven't outlawed cash yet.
They have not. So do not pay for things without with your credit card. Use cash.
Yes. And it's a good way of tracking how you spend your money too. If you're spending cash, you know exactly how your money's going. A card is way too easy to swipe. Go ahead, Kat.
Third, digital ID is already here. So biometrics are the future. And if you have a government issued ID associated with your photograph, you're in the system already. And we all do because we all have social media. And the social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they are the government.
Yes.
Those are simonious. So the government already has a photo ID of you. It's called your social media account.
Did you say simonious? I kind of like that. Synonymous.
Synonymous?
Oh, right.
Simonious.
Simonious. It's like a symptom.
Synonymous.
Symphony. You kind of you kind of hit that together. I like that though. Simonious. Most of the listening audience probably didn't even notice, but I'm listening to you, Kat.
Oops.
Hey, Kat, but then another quick point on that with the digital ID is in the vax passport. I'm a pure blood. I never got the vaccine.
Yeah.
I've not hidden that from you as my audience. And I didn't get it. Now, when you move towards this, they're going to know all of these things about you, your medical records, everything. That's what the biometrics are about. They're going to determine, obviously they don't have a problem with controlling conception and who lives as an infant. What makes you think they're not going to fast forward that into how long you can receive health care? Because you're no longer viable.
Yeah. Oh, they've done that in Canada. It's called medically assisted suicide or whatever.
That's just a little side note. I don't even know if that really fit into the digital ID, but keep going.
The number 4 is Greater Depression. So our economy is going to be wiped out by 2025. This is what Hunt suggests, the market pullback of up to 30% between now and early 2024. Followed by a pump and deflationary wipeout in 2025. So
Simon Hunt already has predicted that. This is a prediction, and yet we have seen it. They do know how to pump the economy. Think about where we were in our economy under Trump in 2020. and even in through 2021, because really there's a residual value. You know, Joe Biden couldn't come in and implode it all overnight, but he did a pretty good bang up job, right? First day on the
Yeah.
job, he shuts down the pipelines.
Yep. And it's exploding. Our economy is
I wonder if all
exploding,
those guys were union
imploding.
workers like the UAW guys, because, you know, he's all about protecting jobs.
Uh,
Just
no,
ask him.
yeah, he's created more jobs than anybody.
Created more jobs, and he's more union jobs. They are proud union homes at the Biden family. Hunter, he has a union job.
Yes, he does. The fifth assumption is that most financial assets will disappear at some point. And then the sixth assumption is increasing crime and disorder. The seventh assumption is the supply chain crisis. Supply constraints are increasing around all commodities. Globally, people will have a much harder time affording everything from food to energy. The eighth is that World War III is coming, and it's coming.
And it may be already here,
I think so.
obviously, as we look at, because wars are fought differently now, Kat, than they were before.
Mhm,
We're in digital wars. We're in information wars.
mhm,
We're in biochemical wars.
mm,
Really? No, I mean, they have biochem labs. There's a reason they have biochem labs.
mhm.
Fauci has participated in gain of function. Why do we have to gain a function? Keep going, Kat.
Bioweapons.
Bioweapons.
So that was the eighth. World War III is coming, or it's already here. The
Yeah.
ninth assumption is censorship and digital control will enter a new phase that includes debanking. I like to call it defacing as well,
Defacing, debanking. Yep.
taking away who you are via censorship.
Yeah.
Uh,
And being your financial means of existing.
mhm.
You know, if you don't have digital currency and you don't have an access to your cash, then what do? You're a nomad. You better go pick some apples.
You're no bad. The 10th assumption, U.S. election, regardless of the outcome, is an inflection point and potentially a flashpoint. And we're not sure. I'm not sure if we'll even have a 2024 election. I've been saying that for a long time. I
And
don't
there's
think we're gonna
rumor.
have a 2024.
Well, yeah, really, they're going to roll out Joe Biden, you know, for another term. Really, if you believe Joe Biden's going to be the nominee of the Democrat Party, good luck.
Good luck, and you're sleeping.
Yeah,
You're sleeping.
yeah.
Wake up. And last and unfortunately not least, there is a war happening today, and it's a war on us. That's clear. David Paul has gone through it. People like Mark Huck, that pro life activist, have gone through it. January 6th detainees. Uh, there's all kinds of people every single day. This poor gentleman who had his door kicked in, and he was an elderly gentleman, and he really just needed his Facebook account shut down. Uh, he got he's dead.
The war in DC, Kat, our Congress, those people out there, it doesn't matter who the personality is. I don't care. Our Constitution says they're there to represent us. They are not representing us. They're representing lobbyists. They're representing globalists. You know, I'm not saying there's not a few good people out there. There are. Unfortunately, they're bullied into going along to get along with the uniparty, and that's what it's become in DC. The swamp. Trump said, "I want to drain the swamp." He just didn't realize how flooded the swamp was.
Mm,
A lot more water, a lot more swamp creatures there than anyone could ever predict, because it's not about you and me. It's about maintaining their status quo and liberalism. You know, I love what Bongino says. Most Republicans are really Democrats, but
mhm.
no Democrats are really Republicans. And he's so true. Actually, most of them are just really swamp creatures.
They're all swamp creatures. Well,
They're all swamp creatures.
we've got to take a break. Well, that's going to do it for our show.
Yeah, we're not taking a break, Cat. We're getting out of
We're
here.
getting out of
The
here.
harvest is plenty. The laborers are few. Thank you for joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. This was a harvest season special. Folks, plant, cultivate, and harvest. Get out, work at it. You reap what you sow, but so does the other side. They reap it too. So know what we're up against. These 11 points will be up on our social media site, Kat, until we do this again.
Yeah. Signing off, it's Cities 92.3